Welcome to Video Village. My name is Mihir Shah, and today we are talking about the top 10 movies of 2023. Joining me after a long hiatus is Parv who, we had a most anticipated movies draft of 2023 about a year ago today, and now we're here talking about the best movies of 2023. And I know we're gonna basically walk through what we thought was gonna be the best movies of the year and what actually went down. But just looking at what's in front of us, looking at what you watched, looking at what we drafted, how are you feeling? How is 2023 as a movie year?
Listen, I gotta say, if this draft had any meaning at all in my life, and any consequences from the draft, I would be fired immediately. It was just it didn't go well.
Yeah, if there's money on the line, you lose.
Yeah,
you're losing the fortune.
Yeah, 2023. I don't know if it was a good movie year for me personally. I think a lot of the things we thought were going to be good ended up being good, but I don't know if they reached that peak. I feel like there was a bottleneck, close to the top for me, but only a couple movies really broke through and will have like staying power.
I tend to agree, but I think that I think I watched more movies than you in 2023, partly because of like the Oscars and I watched everything, but I think that my tail is longer than your tail of like mid-tier movies that I'd still recommend to most people. But it's weird because in 2022, I actually liked a good bit of 2022 movies. But we were talking about 2022 like, oh yeah, it was an alright year, but 2023 it's gonna be crazy. And to an extent it kind of was because like a lot of things came out, but then the strike happened. The Screen Actors Guild strike, Writers Guild strike. And you basically saw half your draft board not get released in 2023, partly because of that, partly because they just didn't work out.
Yeah, so we got the built-in excuse there, but it was a poor showing. I'll admit it. When we did the draft, I feel like there was just so many anticipated blockbuster movies that had just been put on hold because of the pandemic and things were starting to get going again. So we had all this backup of like, big names and movies that were getting a lot of marketing. But I think what I realized is a lot of the times the best movies of the year end up being those that you never hear about until they're actually in the theater. Or, you see the trailer when the movie's actually coming out on YouTube, which makes it tough to do a draft like this. So, God gives his hardest challenges to his strongest soldiers, and we took up the mantle there. So,
yeah,
proud of us for doing it, I guess.
We tried. We really tried. Let's just get into it. I want to walk through our most anticipated draft picks and then talk about our reviews of those movies briefly. Let's start at the bottom of yours. What was your 10th most anticipated movie of 2023?
My 10th most anticipated movie was a movie called Tetris. Tetris did come out in 2023. I did not watch it. That's a hand up.
Neither did I.
Hand up. We were talking raving about it earlier. But just didn't get around to it. Got a little busy and it just, fell under some other papers. What can you do?
What can you do? Big stacks on the desk, gets lost. I think it's on Apple TV now, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's been on Apple TV for months.
Hey, one day. Add it to the watch list, I think my watch list on Letterboxd is 1,300 movies.
As it should be.
Add it to the bottom. My number 10 was The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which now looking back on it, good movie. I've been calling it a good movie, but I think these like franchise staples that get released in a year, it's easy to write them off when you're looking at a screen that has like 10 franchise names, and it's like, yeah, just another franchise sequel. This is, it's a prequel, but this is a good movie. You didn't see this one yet, did you?
I didn't see it. I wasn't too high on it at the time, honestly. I'd seen some visuals from it, and it looked like a made-for-TV movie almost. Like, there wasn't any big-name actors. They were switching to this next generation, and I was like, I don't know about this. But from what I heard, it looks like it ended up going over pretty well. And I don't know if it's working from any source material or anything like that. Maybe it stayed true to that. But it's another
Yeah,
one
it is
that,
based on a book by Suzanne Collins. Like she's writing a
yeah.
prequel series that focuses on President Snow as the main antagonist or protagonist, whatever. Um, yeah, good movie. I'm really happy I saw this in theaters. I don't think I would have enjoyed it nearly as much if I was watching it streaming. Um, but there's a lot to recommend, and if you are a fan of the Hunger Games and in general just fan of like young adult fiction uh, content, it's like a must watch. I feel like.
Yeah, I got Legally Blonde 3. Did not come out in 2023. Um, what can you do? What can you do there? It's a TBD for us.
But the Legally Blonde 3, I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure I said this when we drafted it. Dude, that movie has been announced as like it's coming for years. Like it's been quote unquote in development for a long time.
5 years away from being 5 years away. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So don't draft it this year. If we do an inevitable March 2024 draft, don't draft it. My number 9 is Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, which came out almost a year ago. I think it came out in April of 2023, and I did not watch it. It was on the plane, Air India flight. I almost watched it on the plane, but I opted to get 8 hours of straight sleep instead. Frankly, I don't know when I'll watch this one. I think I was just kind of reaching at the end of the draft, so don't really know what to say about that. Our number 8, I'm excited to actually talk about this one. What's your number 8?
We got the Wes Anderson off. We got a couple Wes Anderson releases from 2023. His feature length, Asteroid City, was picked by me here. I picked The Wonderful World of Henry Sugar. And I did not realize at the time that it was going to be a short movie. Or not a movie, I guess. It's not a feature-length film. And I really didn't care for it. I think it was one where there was just... it was like the script was 100 pages long and they were speaking 100 miles per hour nonstop. And things were just kind of happening in the background. I didn't really get the point of it. It was like an uninteresting podcast, kind of like this one. But.
Yeah. If you didn't say it, I would have said it. I really liked. I liked The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar better than I liked Asteroid City. For what it's worth, I think Asteroid City has a lot more like depth to it. Definitely. But I think like Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, it's 40 minutes, and it's one of 4 short films that Wes Anderson put out on Netflix that are all based on Roald Dahl short stories. And this one is the longest. And I just like fell in love with the storytelling style. I didn't think I would in the first 5 minutes, but like halfway through, I was like, I could watch them act/read this story to me all day. It kind of felt like a bedtime story. Certainly like the other 17-minute short films did. And I don't know, this one obviously like is the one that's nominated for an Oscar. It's probably going to win the Oscar for live action short film in a couple of days. And yeah, I just thought it was really charming. I get why people wouldn't like it because there's, it's a pretty like plain story when you look at it. But I don't know, I found it very charming. What about Asteroid City? I think we were both like pretty confused by Asteroid City.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I might have fallen asleep for 30 minutes in the middle. I don't recall much. It was just kind of what I expected that it would be, which is kind of maybe better than The French Dispatch, but not as good as Wes Anderson in his heyday when he was making Fantastic Mr. Fox and Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest Hotel. It wouldn't stack up to something like that, but it had the classic Wes Anderson dialogue delivery style, set design as well. Just a lot of small stories kind of coming together. Still felt like he was doing a lot personally. Don't know if it's one I'd rewatch, but it's there.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably a lot under the surface that's like meaning you can derive. But frankly, the first time I watched it, and the only time I watched it, I just didn't find it. I couldn't latch on anything to be like, oh, that's something. Like it was just all over my head. No pun intended, if you've seen the movie. Our number 7s. super exciting. My number 7 was Beau is Afraid, which was a, psychological thriller horror movie that came out almost a year ago. And yours was Napoleon, which came out this past Thanksgiving.
Yeah, probably two of the longest feature movies from last year.
and they both starred Joaquin Phoenix. It's crazy
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
And I didn't watch Beau is Afraid, and you didn't watch Napoleon.
yep.
Yeah, so we're doing great. I did
Yeah.
watch Napoleon on my flight to India a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Honestly, like the movie is like not a good movie if you like history. I think because it's like really just not much there in terms of like real content, but the production and like the action set pieces are really engaging and really fun to watch. And there's enough action set pieces in the movie that it's watchable. I wouldn't recommend it for like the story at all, but I actually do think it's like a genuinely decent throw it on and like be like, oh, they're fighting on the ice and oh, there's this battle. So yeah, that's all I can say about Napoleon.
Yeah, it's
3
not.
Oscar nominations.
Yeah, it's not going to be added to any classroom curriculums or anything like that, right? This is just another one of them ones to turn your brain off and watch some good old fashioned war.
Yeah, and I did not think that it was going to be like the whole life story of Napoleon, but it was the whole life story of Napoleon. Like I thought it was going to focus on a certain part of his career or whatever. Like no, they just did everything. I was like, okay, guess we're doing that. All right, number 6. I had Elemental, the Pixar film from this past summer, and you had Challengers, which starring Zendaya, did not come out, but is actually coming out very soon.
I've been seeing a lot of trailers. A lot of trailers have been coming out recently.
Yeah, they're back after a 6-month hiatus of trailers. They're back showing the same ones.
Yep.
Are you excited about Challengers still?
I'm excited. I'm excited. I think I'll try to end up seeing it in the theaters if I can. I think it's going to be. I think at its very best, it's going to be pleasantly surprising, but I think it has a high floor as well. I think there's going to be some interesting dynamics between the characters. It's kind of, from my understanding, the story about some sort of love triangle. So, that's always a little bit of drama is needed.
Yeah, I agree. Anything with Zendaya, I'm like decently excited by. It's directed by Luca Guadagnino. Did you see Call Me by Your Name? Which was
I did. I did. I thought it was fine. It's a very understated movie, and I think I just don't do well with most understated movies. I just find them to be underwhelming.
Yeah, you're looking for something a little bit more stated. I get it. Elemental was fine. Like I actually had there was moments where I was genuinely enjoying it, but those were like really quick, and for most of it I was perplexed that it was about Indian people. Like the fired people are basically just like faux Indian, kind of pan Asian immigrants.
Spicy.
Yeah. And the water people were some of the whitest characters I've ever seen on screen. Wade the water guy is one of the main characters, and he's one of the most annoying characters that you'll ever see in a movie. So it's actually like got some decent animation. I wouldn't not recommend it, especially if you have kids. I'm sure it's a great movie to show kids. Some good morals in there. But yeah, if you're an adult, just not nowhere near Pixar's best.
Yeah. Going to number 5.
Yeah, go for it.
So, common theme here. I got Wonka. Did not watch that one either. And it has had a long theatrical run, so I've had many opportunities to go see it. But I did see that I think it's releasing on Max or somewhere else tomorrow, and it's at the top of my list. I'm going to have some thoughts on it. Not soon enough, but still they're coming. I've recently decided that I might have to become a Timothée Chalamet stan. I'm just so intrigued whenever he's starring in a movie or acting in it. I think, it's not necessarily that he's giving, best actor performances left and right, but he's always doing things. He's keeping it interesting. So I think for that reason alone, I should check it out. And I heard it's a musical, right? So he's doing a little singing, dancing, maybe?
Dude, Timothée Chalamet Club. We welcome you with open arms. I've been there since Little Women. I think Little Women might have been the first thing I ever saw him in, which is kind of crazy if you don't count Interstellar. He's great. He's great in everything.
He's the man every man wants to be.
Yeah, it's crazy because he is our age. Like he he will be coming like, when we're 50. He'll be a 50-year-old movie star
Yeah.
doing 50-year-old movie roles. That's exciting. I'm excited to see where his career goes. And he'll be in a movie that we'll talk about a little bit later in this list. My number 5 was Air. What'd you think about Air?
I thought Air was fine. It told the story it signed up to tell, and I don't know if it was any more interesting than that. I mean, dialogue driven. I didn't find Matt Damon particularly compelling in this movie. Um, Ben Affleck was, a nice change of pace here and there, but I mean, Chris Tucker is probably the best part of the movie, in my opinion. And everyone did really well. I think the historical aspect here was represented, fairly well. Kind of like the reverse Napoleon right here.
Yeah.
But it was like fun to watch once. Don't know if I'll check it out again.
Yeah, I feel the same way. But I do think that the performances are probably the best part of it. The script is good, decently engaging, but Viola Davis, who plays Michael Jordan's mom, has some like small but pretty pivotal scenes in the movie. I thought she was really good. And yeah, like you said, Chris Tucker, Chris Messina. There's a couple like supporting actor performances in this that certainly like keep the engine going. Crazy that this movie came out like basically a year ago today. Like it was a March 2023 release. It's been a while. All right, let's go to number 4. Your number 4 pick was Nosferatu, which did not release in 2023. How you feeling, Purva? It's not looking hot.
2024, man. We're coming. We're coming. We're ready.
My number 4 was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is one of my favorite movies of the year, one of the best movies of the year, certainly the best animated movie I saw in 2023. I hope it wins the Oscar come Sunday. Yeah, I'll save more detailed thoughts for this when we kind of talk about our real 2023 draft boards, but I was very happy. I think the rest of my draft is like, for me, my draft board now is like pretty successful, which I'm really excited by. You, not so much. Let's talk about our number 3 picks. What's your number 3, Purva?
Number 3, I went off the board. I had to reach for my guy here. This is, drafting Anthony Bennett with the first overall pick, in that vein. I drafted The Killer. The Killer, the David Fincher movie that came out, I think it was directly onto Netflix this past fall. And, this quintessential David Fincher, and apparently that is the point of the whole movie. It might even be a commentary on other David Fincher movies. He's kind of mastered that, psycho thriller genre, but it just wasn't any interesting to me. It basically just followed Michael Fassbender's character, who was, just like an unnamed assassin. Basically, had nothing setting him apart from, he's not even Jason Bourne, he's not James Bond, right? And we just kind of go through his inner monologue, and he just seems to, bat back and forth between extreme confidence and precision in what he does, and then breaking his own rules, and things going awry. And I don't know, this film had a couple of twists here and there, but nothing that really shocked me and excited me. I was just kind of waiting to get it over with almost. So I was really disappointed by this movie. I think my expectations were pretty high, which I think factored in as well.
Yeah, that is tough. I definitely liked it more than you, but I share a lot of your feelings about it. I think 2 things about it that were really great were that they showed that in our modern day society, technology can basically allow you to live life as a sociopath, and in this case as a contract killer, as an assassin. And I found a lot of those examples really fun. Obviously, they were small parts of longer scenes and don't really make up too much of the movie, but I thought that was a really like memorable part of it. And I think this maybe has the best fight scene I saw in the entire year, which was that fight scene in the house in, I think, Cuba or Florida or something. So yeah, two small positives about The Killer. But if you're curious, you can watch that on Netflix. My number 3 is Oppenheimer, which, I mean, it's Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
Is there that much?
We'll have a long discussion on Oppenheimer, as pretty much anyone in the movie world has been having. It's extremely prescient. The Oscars are this upcoming weekend, and we're expecting big things. Um,
Yeah, eight awards at least. I think that's my line right now. It's 8 or 9. Not sure which way it'll land. Um, yeah, let's go to number two.
Number two, I got Dune Part Two. Now, it didn't release in 2023, which is why for the purposes of the draft, we can't count it. But that was actually a movie I really enjoyed, and I think is objectively good. And I'm sure when we have a 2024 discussion, probably much sooner than that, we'll get all into this film and part one, which we fell in love with, and what's to come from the series, and potentially from Denis Villeneuve staying on. So more to come.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Dune. We'll talk about Dune in detail on a separate episode. I saw it last night, and yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. So that's your number two. My number two is Killers of the Flower Moon, which I believe made both of our actual top 10 lists. So I will hold off on discussing that movie until we get there. But just incredible. It's on Apple TV now. You can watch it 3.5 hours. So it's a tough sit if you're at home. I get it. But we were both lucky enough to see this movie in theaters, and I think that really does the story justice. And yeah, it was one of the better movies of the year. All right, finally our number one picks of the year. So let's. I'm actually excited to talk about this one because I'll go first. My number one was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which has now been named Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning by the studio because they've decided to change the name of whatever sequel is coming out next. I thought this movie was really fun. It's not nearly as good as it thinks it is, but certainly, like if you like Tom Cruise and if you like other Mission Impossible movies, it's pretty hard to like walk away from this one being like I didn't have fun. The story meanders. It's about AI and all these futuristic now present things, and I think part of that story is just not nearly as engaging as it wants to be. But it has like all of the classic Mission Impossible things and some incredible stunt sequences. And yeah, it's just a really, really fun romp, and was really, really fun watching it in IMAX in the theater. So I'm happy I picked this one. Certainly not in my top 10, but yeah, it's pretty great.
Yes. Now we come to last year's number one overall pick, and that is Barbie. I gotta say, we were right to have this be the first overall pick that we took a year ago. I think it was the most interesting, heavily marketed movie that we could have seen coming. I think it was the one that we should have picked. We knew Greta Gerwig was going to put her classic spin on it. She definitely did. This movie, blew up and owned a large part of the year. I think as it should have. Personally, I was like, this is very good. Don't know if I'll personally, go out of my way and watch it again, but I like what they did here. You find no complaints.
Yeah, I and we had a whole Barbie episode like last summer. We kind of deep dived it. Looking back, like it's easy to get caught up in the weeds of movies and talk about like specifics that what worked and what didn't. I think the ending for me was always problematic. Not problematic, just like didn't work for me nearly as well as I wanted it to. But like zooming out and looking at what that movie did, highest grossing movie of the year, nominated for some 8-9 Oscars. And obviously you have a director like Greta Gerwig making a movie like that. It's an awesome accomplishment. It's something that will just be a hallmark of 2023 and of the 2020s. And hopefully we don't look back and say, remember when Barbie happened and then Mattel made 100 awful movies? I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see. But yeah, I agree. I think Barbie deserved to be the number one overall pick of the year, and pretty much held its weight. I wouldn't have changed anything there. And that's it. That was our most anticipated movies of 2023. And I'm now very excited to talk about our actual top 10 movies of the year. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dig into our actual lists. we were saying that 2023 was slightly disappointing, at least for you, and I'm excited to talk about what wasn't disappointing. We got 10 movies laid out here. We have a couple repeats between our two lists, but nonetheless, a lot of great movies to shout out. Why don't you go ahead and start with your number 10 movie of the year?
Yeah, so number 10, I've got a movie called They Clone Tyrone. This came out on Netflix. Gosh, I don't remember exactly when. It was the summer, the fall, sometime. And it's kind of like, it's got a lot going on, and it didn't all work for me. I think if they trimmed the script down, maybe 20, 30 minutes, it could have been a really tight sci-fi thriller. But it's kind of like a play on like blaxploitation movies from the 70s, mixed with sci-fi, mixed with mystery and thriller. Kind of like a weird kind of cloning situation happening in, kind of like this, more, underprivileged neighborhood. Very, very, very interesting. They're doing a lot. They're doing a lot, and it kept my attention for the entire runtime. And it sneaks in at number 10.
That's fun. I didn't know it was on Netflix. I'll have to check this one out. I remember you seeing it, and I remember you saying you were a fan of it, but yeah, didn't know. Cool. Any other thoughts?
No.
My number 10 is Anatomy of a Fall, which is nominated for like 5 Oscars, and that's kind of crazy considering like where this movie came from. It's an international film, French film. French courtroom drama, but more so this is a French kind of like murder mystery almost. Did she do it? Did she not do it? Movie.
Did she do it? Did she?
Yeah. And this is your number 5 movie of the year.
It is, and I think it's just number 5 because this will go with my thinking that it was a little bit of a shallow year, but I did enjoy it when I went to watch this. I will say I walked in about 10 minutes late, so I missed some of the pivotal scenes in the beginning, but I was able to kind of.
That's actually kind of insane that you have it at number 5 and you missed like maybe the most crucial opening to any movie of the year.
Yeah. So probably due for a rewatch. That could bump it up. But what I really loved about this movie was the courtroom scenes. I mean, it's French court, which I don't know if many American audiences are used to seeing it all. People are all dressed up, wigs and everything, but the style of the prosecution, really, really just the dialogue written in the courtroom is just so quick, so back and forth. Just expert lawyers, probably dramatized. I'm not sure how often French courts are, French lawyers are firing back at one another like they do in this movie. But those scenes really, really stuck with me. I also think, the actor who played the son, blind son, did an amazing job. Really, conveyed the emotion of he's caught between his mother and his father. His father is now dead, and all that he has is his mother. All he can do is protect her, which kind of helps contribute to this feeling of the fact that we're not going to get the truth of what actually happened, or we don't know what actually happened, and we'll never know.
Yeah, the lead actress in this movie is named Sandra Hüller, and she was in another film that is both on both of our lists and also heavily represented at this year's Oscars called The Zone of Interest. So she's had a massive year, at least a massive year from an American award standpoint. And I thought she was really, really, really good in this movie, and she's nominated for Best Actress for this performance, and I think I would probably also nominate her if it was up to me. And the last performance in this movie that we got to talk about, the dog. The dog in this film is maybe one of the best dog actors I've ever seen. He's a guide dog for the son, and he's doing a lot, honestly, for a dog. Like he carries a pretty pivotal role in this movie. So shout out the dog. I think his real name is Messi. like the soccer player, I think.
Mm.
Or is that in the movie? I'm not sure. It's either Snoop or Messi. I'm not sure which one is in
I think his
the
name in
film
the
and which one is
movie
real
was
life.
Snoop. I feel like I recall Snoop.
Okay, then this dog's name is Messi. So shout out Messi. This is a good movie. This is a really good movie. I think I watched this movie on my phone, which is kind of an insane way to watch a like 2 hour lengthy talkie drama. And I still really liked it. It still made my list. So I'm sure if I watch this again on a larger screen, or especially like in a movie theater like you did, it would definitely maybe bump even higher. But yeah, big fan of this one. All right, number 9. What do you have in your number 9?
I have our number one overall pick, Barbie. Um, we talked about this a fair amount, a little while ago. Perfect for not necessarily my favorite, but I'm not gonna have any complaints either.
Really fun movie. I'm glad it got the love that it got. My number 9 is The Holdovers. This movie came out in November this last year. You can watch it on Peacock, I believe. This is a really, really charming movie about a professor at a boarding school in Massachusetts who is basically like chosen slash punished by his administrators to stay during the winter break at the school with the very few amount of students who don't have anywhere else to go, and they are called the holdovers. And so he is basically forced to hang out with a group of kids, and it starts off kind of like, well, the whole movie is pretty formulaic. Like, you know what this movie is, and despite that, I found it to just be like so sincere, and I found the performances to be it's really powerful and moving, and I was just charmed the entire time. Like, I was smiling and giggling, and the best way I can describe it is like there's a lot of I had a conversation with my manager actually, and he was talking about a movie reference, and then he said the movie, and the movie was Dazed and Confused, which is a 90s high school movie. And I've known this for a while, but I don't have a relationship to like any high school movies from the 80s and 90s, which is like when most of them started to come out. The Breakfast Club, haven't seen it. Any John Hughes movie, haven't seen it. Ferris Bueller, haven't seen it. This is like the first movie that feels like it could have came out in the 70s or 80s that I felt like I really, really related to. And obviously it didn't come out then, it came out now. So it just kind of felt nice to like watch a movie like this, fall in love with it, and be really into it. And I think this is gonna like continue to rise the ranks for me because I will definitely be rewatching this come next winter. It's a really good holiday movie and a really good family movie. So yeah, really, really happy about The Holdovers this year.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. It's like a quintessential holiday movie, kind of like an instant classic, very cozy. The crotchety old teacher professor, is forced to take care of these rowdy youngsters who all have their own issues, and they end up bonding and becoming friends and respecting one another. And, it's hard to hate on a movie like that. It's a Northeast movie, and they take a trip to Boston. And I live in Boston since being here. It's always so interesting to see movies that take place in Boston and be like, oh, I've been here. Like, I know what this is. So that added to it for me as well. At the end of the day, for me, it was a little bit formulaic, a little bit too formulaic for me to rate it too highly, but definitely respect the movie, respect the choice as well.
Yeah, I think on Sunday at the Oscars, it'll definitely be winning Best Supporting Actress for Divine Joy Randolph, who plays Mary, who's a cook, a chef at the school. She basically has been the number one person in the Best Supporting Actress category since this movie came out. That is not shifting anytime soon. So happy it'll at least be a Oscar winner for something, but otherwise, yeah, not going to take home anything. Let's jump to number 8. What's your number 8 movie?
Number 8, I got a movie that we briefly touched on, Zone of Interest. It's another Sandra Hüller movie. So this movie, I think it's technically a British production or something like that, but it's all in German. Basically follows the lives of like the family of basically the Nazi officer who runs one of the most notorious or largest concentration camps during World War II, and it's very very powerful. It never shows you kind of any scenes from inside the camp, but it's basically just follows the lives of this family, husband, wife, and young kids and everything, just outside the camp, and you kind of they subtly kind of remind you of like the horror and the nature of things that are going on just 100 feet away, but how normalized it all is for the characters in that movie, and it feels like they're just normal kind of like happy family, but it really shocks you how these things can would have been so normalized in that situation in that time. So yes, very very powerful.
Yeah, they talk about the banality of evil when it comes to the Holocaust and World War
Yeah.
II, and that's basically what this movie is showing. I think what really took it to the next level for me, I mean, a lot of things did, but I really was attached to the ending. And I won't spoil it, I guess, but because this movie has not really been, it's not a popular movie, it hasn't been watched by that many people, and so I don't want to spoil it just yet, but the ending to this movie is like very open-ended, very artistic, and to me what it represented was this idea that we as the audience and even us kind of this far removed from the Holocaust to a certain extent can only view and experience things from behind a screen and from a distance the same way the family was, and that this movie is about spaces and spaces in relation to the Holocaust, and to an extent we will always be seeing things from behind a glass window. And so yeah, I think there's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways you could read the movie, but I found it really powerful as well. This is my number 6 movie of the year. Also really really loved it. And yeah, this movie's gonna win Best International Feature and has a small chance to win Best Sound, which I think is like an incredible achievement because the sound of this movie, I think you mentioned it, but like from just like at the edges of your auditorial experience while watching this in the theater, you hear screams, and you hear people suffering and getting shot, and the way that they've crafted that experience was like pretty visceral in the theater. Yeah. Zone of Interest is my number 7 movie. My number 8 movie is called Perfect Days. This is a Japanese film about a man who is a toilet cleaner, and he basically has what seems like perfect days. He kind of has this like really simple and effective morning routine, and he has the same sort of start to his day, and he likes his routine. And despite being a toilet cleaner, he has a lot of pride in his work, and we basically see him go through his day a handful of times. And if you've seen the trailers for this movie, you probably understand that already. This movie has one of the best soundtracks of the year because a lot of the music is just like this character's cassettes that he kind of pops in on his drive to work, and they're all like classic bangers, rock and roll bangers. But there's a lot of depth revealed in the back half of this film when his perfect days start to sort of fall apart. And it's not like, oh, everything goes horrifically wrong. It's more just kind of showing the other side of having a routine like this, the other side of having such a simplistic life. And it's a really, really powerful ending, one of the more powerful images of the year. And I think just one of the most underrated acting performances of the year. Really wish that this was represented in Best Actor. But yeah, I absolutely love this movie, and I hope more people watch it, especially because it's nominated at the Oscars. I'm hoping that gets it in front of more people. Okay, our number 7. So my number 7 is The Zone of Interest. We already talked about that one. What is your number 7 movie?
My number 7 is a movie called Rye Lane. I'm pretty sure this came out in like February or March of last year. I think straight to Hulu. So it's been around for a while. It's
been a while since I saw it, and the way I would describe it is kind of like a modern rom com. Two kind of mid-20s, man and a woman. They kind of cross paths with each other, and through a series of events, kind of find out that there might be more there than just an acquaintance. Um, and it's really cute. It's a really quick, zippy watch. There's good laughs in it. I think it just does a great job getting the job done.
Okay, perfect. My number 6 movie of the year is a documentary, the only documentary on both of our lists. This is 20 Days in Mariupol. This is the frontrunner and most likely winner of the Best Documentary Feature category at this year's Oscars. You can watch this for free on YouTube. This is an Associated Press PBS production, and frankly, like a miracle of a movie. Basically, it's a documentary filmmaker / journalist in the city of Mariupol in Ukraine as Russia begins to attack and invade Mariupol. And it's basically his journey trying to survive, frankly, in Mariupol for 20 days. And then on the 20th day, I won't say anything, but basically the movie ends. And it is harrowing. It is genuinely difficult to watch at times. And I believe there's a quote from the movie addressing this, basically saying that like this is hard to see, but it is necessary to see. And yeah, I found it to be really powerful. And obviously the subject matter is powerful, but the actual filmmaking itself makes like the last 30 minutes feels like an action movie. The middle hour feels like a devastating drama. Like it's just really, really good filmmaking, great pacing, great editing. And of course, just like some of the most like shocking and powerful images you've ever seen. So I couldn't recommend it enough. What is your number 6 movie?
My number 6 is Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, this is my number 4.
Yeah, one of the most anticipated movies of the year. Definitely delivers on its promise. Martin Scorsese's had so many magnum opuses over the years. I think this can be counted as one of them. I think it's probably the longest film he's ever done, 3.5 hours. I don't think he's got anything longer than that. And it's terrific.
It keeps going longer. Irishman was like 3.5, getting there. It was like 3 hours and 15.
Irishman might have been longer, honestly. Yeah.
It felt longer. I don't think it was, but it felt longer.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are already familiar with it because this movie's blown up in a huge way. But it kind of tells the story of the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. I believe in the 1920s or 1910s. I think 20s, but and it talks about how there was initially an oil boom, and the Native Americans, the Osage Nation, were able to like lease out their mineral rights to oil companies, led to great wealth concentrated there. But then outsiders came in and started to try to chip away at that or get their own piece of it, and truly like nefarious and like just terrible ways. I think this movie does a great job of showing like the true horror and just truly like disgusting nature of those people, and how there wasn't an FBI investigation until members of the Osage Nation went all the way to Washington D.C. To get them to investigate murders upon murders, which had already taken place, and it's honestly it leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth when it ends, even as stories true to reality often do. But yeah, just so well done. It's coming in at number 6, which it might seem kind of low, but I have like maybe 5 or so movies that I'll just kind of get bunched up right around here. So it's pretty fluid within the top 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. Pretty much like zone of interest through number 4, which is Killers of the Flower Moon for me. So I get it. all I add is like some of the best performances of the year. Lily Gladstone is the most talked about, and she was really, really good. And I think Leo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro were also really, really good, but no one's really talking about them. DiCaprio wasn't nominated for Best Actor. Um, De Niro has been nominated, but no one really cares because Robert Downey Jr. is just going to win everything. And like both of them were like phenomenal in this movie, and especially De Niro is like really menacing and just like really good at what he's doing. And yeah, just bar for bar, just one of the best movies of the year. I would say probably the best ending of the year, or certainly like has to be in the conversation. Just the way Scorsese himself is kind of addressing things at the very end, and what that means, and the feeling that it leaves with you with in the theater. I just found to be profound. I've just never seen anything like that, especially from a movie this large and of this scale. Yeah, what do you think of the ending?
Yeah. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I wasn't a big fan of that.
Damn. Okay.
To each their own.
Yeah. I don't know. I was shocked. I think it helped that I know who Scorsese is, and I care about his filmography and him as a director, because I think that kind of enters a new zone. I think for like a lot of people, not saying that you're not one of those people, but I'm saying for a lot of people, the ending just didn't really hit the same way, and that might have been one of the reasons. Now that was number 6, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We did number 6, so we have our top 5 remaining. I want to take a brief break from the actual list and just shout out honorable mention movies. We both watched a lot of movies this year, and just because they didn't make our top 10, obviously, doesn't mean that they're not worth shouting out. So I'll let you start, because I honestly, frankly, have a large list that I just kind of want to rattle through. But if you have a couple that you want to talk through, let's hear them now.
I think one we got to shout out for sure is Poor Things. I think it's one of the biggest, one of the most watched movies from 2023. We did. We're gonna have a what's age the best, what's age the worst from last year section at the end. We did shout this movie out last year in the podcast, which was super clutch by us. But yeah, I think that was one of the most interesting movies of the year because it was so widely watched and there was such a variety of views on it. There was people who really hated it and thought it was the worst movie ever, and I totally understand why. And then there's people who thought it was amazing, and I totally understand that mindset as well. I kind of came out somewhere in the middle. Wasn't really a personal favorite for me, but I think it's definitely something worth noting. And I think it's one of those kind of like, at its heart, it's a very artsy, like auteur film, but it got the mass audience that it deserves. So probably introduced a lot of people into film more deeply than they've ever been before.
Certainly, like Yorgos Lanthimos' biggest movie, and he's been making movies for 15, 20 years. And so it's cool to see that like people are just showing up to the theater for a filmmaker like that. So happy to see that. Honestly, like, we had an episode on Video Village about this, and I went into that episode being like, oh yeah, I didn't love it, but there were parts of it that I really appreciated. And after the episode, Bria, who hated the movie, had really kind of convinced me of its flaws, and so I'm a lot lower on it than I was before that episode. But it's fascinating because of like how fluid that is, and how there's a lot to actually talk about with the movie. Which at the end of the day is like, what more could you want from a movie like that?
Yeah, I think elsewhere in honorable mentions, I mean, John Wick Chapter 4, I guess it's honorable for now. John Wick franchise, great franchise. I'm glad we have it, but it's starting to get a little bit repetitive at this point. Like, John just keeps killing more and more people in every movie, and I'm kind of like, John, like, I don't know if you need to do all this, you know what I'm saying? Like, first couple movies, I was with it. I was like, yo, you're getting revenge, for your car, for your dog. Now it's just kind of getting to the point where he's just catching bodies for, like, the stupidest reasons. So I'm getting a little bit tired of it, but it is still an honorable mention. It's entertaining. It's got one of my favorite contemporary music artists in it, Rina Sawayama. I also want to shout out Bottoms. This movie kind of blew up, came out, I think, in the first half of 2023. And, a lot of people went to go see it. It's kind of like a high school comedy, but probably like you've never seen it before. Uh, Very kind of like outrageous vibes from it. And, I found it entertaining. It wasn't my most favorite ever, but glad that it was made, and we want to keep seeing movies get made like this. Keeps things fresh and interesting. So, yeah, I think those are my main honorable mentions.
They're on the list. More so bottoms. I'm curious about John Wick. I haven't seen any of them, which is a big hole in my like action franchise movie watching. But Monkey Man, directed by and starring Dev Patel, is coming out soon. So that's a John Wick I can get behind. So I'm excited for that one. Yeah, I mean I have a lot, frankly, to shout out. So I'm gonna speed through these. Um, Two short films that I just absolutely loved. Invincible, which is a live action short film, Canadian production. It's like 30 minutes and it's about a boy who is struggling with his mental health. And it's just like some of the best child acting I've seen in years and really, really hits hard and just is incredibly well made. You can watch that online. And an animated short film called Pachyderm, which is, I believe, a French short film, and it's 11 minutes, and I don't even want to say anything about it besides the fact that like you need to go see this movie. It's probably like $2 on Vimeo, and it's like just a really good story, really well told, and just hits home. And it's 11 minutes, and it's just a perfect runtime, and I absolutely loved it. We talked about Wes Anderson earlier in the podcast. His other short films on Netflix, he has 4, including The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. The best one, in my opinion, is called The Swan. That one is, it's 17 minutes. They're all 17 minutes aside from Henry Sugar. That one's the best one. Go watch it. Society of the Snow, a Netflix thriller based on a true story. You saw this one today, right? Or yesterday?
I watched about a half to 2/3 of it a couple months ago and then never picked it back up. I think what ended up happening is I started reading the actual Wikipedia article on the plane crash about the plane crash, and I just read how amazing and like the perseverance. That's got to be like the number one. That's got to be like Apex Mountain for perseverance. Sorry, I'm stealing that from the rewatchables, but like, yeah, Apex Mountain for that character trait, because I don't know how a human being could persevere more than the survivors of that plane crash could. So definitely something worth watching. It's on Netflix. I know everybody has it, so you got no excuses.
Yeah, it's like you gotta watch it. It's really well made too, and like it's just terrifying, and like you really feel like you're with them and suffering and suffocating, and so it makes the ending that much better. Yeah, 100%. You gotta watch. 2 documentaries, Four Daughters and To Kill a Tiger. Really fantastic. If you want to know more about them, I have an episode on the Oscar nominees that just came out. Go watch that, or listen to that rather. But yeah, go watch those documentaries. I'm gonna skip one of them because it's gonna come. It's actually your number one movie of the year, Parva. So I'm gonna skip that one, but that's a must watch. There's a movie called Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which I know you were a bit mixed on.
Yeah.
I watched this one on the plane and found it really charming. Stars Rachel McAdams in a supporting role as the mother. It's based on a book, and yeah, it's one of those like coming of age stories, and it's really charming at times. It's a bit predictable looking back on it, but I just found the journey really fun. And if you're into like coming of age stories, especially of like kids in middle school, high school, I think it's like a pretty no-brainer watch. Anything to say about that one?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it takes place in the 70s, 80s, something like that. So I think resonated a lot with people who grew up, who were the same age as the main character in that decade as well.
Short film called Red, White, and Blue, nominated for live action short film, starring Brittany Snow, who you know from Pitch Perfect. Really good. I hated the ending, but if they had just cut out the last 2 minutes, it's like probably the best movie, just period, of the year. So please go watch that one. It's basically about a woman looking to cross state lines to go get an abortion. And it's like 20 minutes max. And I'm telling you, you have to watch it. It's just incredible. A movie that I know you didn't like, I think, but I really liked is called You Hurt My Feelings. Is that true? Do you watch this one?
Haven't
Or
seen
maybe
it.
you watched. I think you watched another Nicole Holofcener movie that you really hated with
Possibly.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus and James Gandolfini. What's that one called?
I don't remember what it's called, but yes, I did not like that one.
Okay, I think that's what I was thinking of. So you haven't seen this one. I really liked You Hurt My Feelings. This movie is the concept is like so absurd and light, that like because the stakes are so light, it almost like helps you kind of like relate to the characters when they do kind of introduce a little bit of heaviness into it. Basically, it's about a woman, a mom who is a writer, and she overhears her husband telling somebody that he doesn't like her script, or rather her current writing. After in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, we see him tell her to her face that he likes the writing, and it's basically about in an older relationship like this, or like a long term relationship like this, like how white lies can be damaging, or rather when do you white lie versus when do you not. It's really funny. It's very like lighthearted. But has a really good heart in it, and I just found the dialogue and the story to be really well written. So that's a really good underrated movie of the year. American Fiction, Best Picture nominee. Pretty decent satire, but I actually found the family drama part of it the more interesting parts. It kind of loses its way throughout the movie. It's kind of meandering. It doesn't really know what it wants to be, I think, but the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, probably. Rocky Irani. remember Rocky Irani? That movie like took over,
God.
absolutely controlled everything for like a month of my life. Deeply disappointing at times, but overall, I would still recommend it. I think that parts of that movie are gonna live on forever. Songs are gonna live on forever. Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about it. That's actually Video Village's most popular episode. I don't know if you knew that, Purva. It's the Rocky Irani episode. It's number one.
Love it.
People like that movie. So shout out Rocky Irani. Remember No Hard Feelings starring Jennifer Lawrence?
Yeah, that, I mean, that's probably, dishonorable mention for me if I had to pick.
Wait, hold your thoughts on that, because I'm going to give you the floor for a couple of dishonorable mentions. I like that movie. I think like parts of it are a little absurd, but I think that as a comedy, it's really funny, and I think the main actor in that, Andrew Barth Feldman, has a really convincing performance. And there's a scene of him playing the piano in a restaurant that I really liked. So shout out this movie before Burrow proceeds to destroy it. I'm almost at the end of my honorable mentions. There's a lot I could talk about, but there's a movie that like no one's talking about because it came out almost a year ago and it was written off. And I wrote it off. I was really pissed off at the trailers. This is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I don't know if you've seen this one yet. It's on something, on Peacock or something. Dude, this is a good movie. This is like...
I've heard it's a good movie.
Yeah, I play Dungeons and Dragons, so I saw the trailer and I was like, dude, fuck this movie. Like, this is like absurd and like not at all what the spirit of D&D is. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter. This is just like a good action adventure kids movie with decent stakes, really charming, good acting from Chris Pine and the supporting cast, and just like exactly what you want from it. It really reminded me, it's not Pirates of the Caribbean, don't get me wrong, I love Pirates of the Caribbean, but it reminded me of like the blockbuster storytelling that we used to get 20 years ago. This is like the closest I've seen of just like, we're going to introduce this crazy world and have some fun characters and just have fun. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it, and I think more people should be watching it. So if you wrote that movie off, don't write it off. It's really good. Okay, there's like literally probably 30 other movies I could have talked about, but those are the ones I feel most strongly about. Oh, no, sorry. One more. Animated movie called Robot Dreams. Nominated for Best Animated Feature, and no one's seen it because it's barely playing in the US. When this releases in theaters, go watch it. It's an hour and a half. No dialogue, basically. It's about a dog in New York City in the 80s who gets lonely, buys a robot friend, and is about their friendship And really, it's about like isolation and loneliness in New York City. And again, I know I've said this about like 5 movies already today, but this is like one of the greatest endings of the year. Really powerful stuff. Yeah, can't recommend this more. Okay, that's my long ass honorable mention section. Burva, giving you the floor for dishonorable mentions. I want to hear you. Let's just hear you dig into a couple movies that you hated.
Appreciate it, man. And you know what's the most dishonorable about this section this year? There's not that many dishonorable mentions. I think I really only have a couple. We said no hard feelings earlier. I mean, I just thought this classic kind of formulaic, strange, like, oh, here's this shy, awkward kid, and we're gonna like, dust off his shoulders and build him up into something. And it was kind of like whatever for me. Honestly, probably being kind of harsh putting it in dishonorable. Saltburn. Let's talk about Saltburn. I mean,
Saltburn.
probably again one of the biggest movies of 2023 in terms of popularity. It's kind of like a weird, I wouldn't even say thriller, but it's like just kind of like a strange, kind of like dark comedy at times.
I don't think the filmmakers know what genre that movie is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were like, I don't know, you tell us.
Like they had a few good ideas of what to do, but not really how to like tie everything together. This is, the movie starring Billy Keoghan and Jacob Elordi.
Say Billy?
Billy Keoghan, right?
It's Barry.
Oh.
Billy's such a funny name. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, that's tough. Barry. My bad, Bear. Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi. Barry plays like, he's going to some school like Oxford or something like that. I don't know what it really is, but and he's kind of more from like a middle class, lower class background, whereas like Jacob Elordi is playing like some legacy student kind of vibe. And it's kind of about, you follow Barry Keoghan's character and, you feel bad for him the whole time. You're rooting for him to make friends. He's the protagonist. But there's some twists and turns along the way that are, I think a lot of people found them very shocking and very made this movie one of those like, notable, most shocking movies of the year. I personally didn't really care for many of the twists. I thought they were kind of fine. And the movie definitely drags a lot.
Yeah, I never think about this movie. I will say, if I were to do the Oscars, the only category I could see it potentially getting nominated in is cinematography. Because I think it is actually shot really well. Shot by Linus Sandgren, who did La La Land, among other movies. So, there's good people working on it.
Yeah. So one more shout out, I guess. And this is actually, I missed this in honorable mention. The Super Mario Bros. Movie. This was a movie that we did touch on a little bit in the 2023 draft podcast as an honorable mention or a shout out. And honestly, it was a fun time. Waited for it to come out on streaming or whatever, and they do enough of nostalgic Nintendo stuff to keep my attention, and it's not, just offensive to the audience, right? Like the story isn't like overly simplistic. It's definitely formulaic, but there's some good voice acting throughout.
For me it's a dishonorable, but I get it. I mean, I think most people in my life actually enjoyed that movie. I found the story to be like frustratingly simple and just like bad, even for a kids movie. But I understand that like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's characters in a world you love, and there's a lot of shout outs to games and stuff that even I had a good time in. But that's that. I don't really feel strongly about it.
All right, should we go to our top 5?
Yeah, let's do it. What is I guess your number 5 is actually Anatomy of a Fall, which we already talked about.
Yes.
But my number 5 is your number 2 movie of the year. So I'm really excited to talk about this one. This is May December.
Yeah.
Which I briefly talked about this on the podcast with Bria, Bria also just loved this movie, and we were kind of raving about it. Lots to talk about here. Why did you love it so much? Why is it your number two?
So I think what I found, what really stuck with me from this movie was that it does. So the first thing I'll say is the music and the kind of musical cues that come in. It feels almost unnatural when the music comes in this movie,
Yes.
but in such a way that it actually worked for me. And I said, hey, honestly, movies need to do this more often rather than me thinking that, oh, this is out of place and it taking away from the movie. I think another thing that was really convincing is the performances from the whole cast are just outstanding, so devastating. It's just devastation all around, really, and it also, I think, kind of plays a little bit on the unreliable narrator trope. You kind of see every character in the movie is putting up a front, basically, but you get bits and pieces of who they are behind the scenes, and you see just true devastation. Just it leaves a pit in your stomach. I think it takes a really good movie to make you feel that way.
Yeah, and I want to say that like I completely agree, but I also want to add that it's a very watchable movie.
It is.
For all the things that is like makes it devastating and like traumatic, or rather the characters in the movie are suffering from traumatic pasts. It's really watchable. It's really entertaining. The dialogue is incredible. The performances are out of this world. Like it came out on Netflix. It came and went, and it almost immediately became an underrated movie, which is really tough because no one really talked about it. It's not an awards contender. I mean, Charles Melton had a little bit of a stint in the Best Supporting Actor category, but ultimately didn't get an Oscar nomination. Its only nomination is in the screenplay category, and it's definitely not winning, which is a shame. So yeah, this is like a must-watch movie. It's just like, I mean, honestly, like it deserves like a way longer conversation than we can have about it today. But yeah, there's just a lot to love. Okay, my number 4, and there's gonna be a little bit of overlap as we get to our number 1 here, but that's okay. So my number 4 is Killers of the Flower Moon, which we already talked about. What is your number 4?
Mine is Godzilla -1. This is Japanese Godzilla movie, live action, and it's basically just like a classic Godzilla story, but a new movie that's been made in 2023. It takes you into like Japan post World War II, and focuses on the kind of almost like rebuilding of lives that needs to happen after the end of World War II and the atomic bomb blasts there, and Godzilla comes in and the classic Godzilla theme plays, and it's just a terrific action movie. Definitely go watch it if you can in theaters. I think this film had a pretty small budget, even though it's so special effects heavy, with like all of Godzilla needing to be, put in through CGI. But the effects look good, so check it out.
Fantastic monster movie. Did you think that Godzilla looked a little funny? I feel like Godzilla looked kind of goofy in this movie.
You look a little bit more like Clifford than I would want him to.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I could see his eyes a little bit too much. So I was like, dang,
Yeah,
bro,
big
like, are you gonna
eyes.
talk? Like, yeah, the Clifford
Puppy
nose, the
dog
round
eyes.
nose. Not how I would have done it, but yeah, great movie. I'm glad it's represented here. It's a fun one. Nominated for Visual Effects Oscar. It has a chance to take it home, which would be really, really cool. We're getting into top 3 territory now. I'm gonna do my third movie first because
Go ahead.
your number
Go
3
ahead.
is my number 2, and we can talk about that together. So my number 3 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Talked about this not really at all earlier in the podcast, but just mentioned it. Man, I think this movie is just incredible. I think it is one of the best sequels I've seen. It is certainly one of the best animated movies I've seen, period. in the conversation for best Spider-Man movie. I think the only one that I would put above it is the first movie in this series, Into the Spider-Verse, or Spider-Man 2, starring Tobey Maguire. But otherwise, it doesn't really come close. This is some of the most impressive animation I've ever seen, and one of the most ambitious movies I've ever seen, period. I think ambition actually does a lot when it comes to a like cinematic experience. You could say the same about Oppenheimer. You could say the same about like Dune Part 2. But there's movies where you can, like, even if you're like, this isn't perfect, the amount that they kind of put on the screen and try to do is like overwhelmingly beautiful and overwhelmingly amazing. And that's how I feel about this movie. The biggest complaint that I heard from people is that it was a setup for the sequel and it wasn't the whole story. And frankly, like I never agreed with that, and I usually don't agree with that perspective about anything. Because people said that about the first Dune movie, and I'm like, if you think that that's a setup for the next movie, you just weren't watching the movie. Because like to me, Dune is like a beautiful masterpiece story that like, yeah, there's a sequel coming, but I didn't need the sequel to know that that's like an incredible movie. And I feel the same way about this one. Yeah, I just think it's just a cinematic experience and achievement that we aren't really talking about as a society anymore. We kind of stopped talking about that once Barbenheimer came along, which is a shame. But yeah, I'm in love with this movie. I don't really remember how you feel about it. I know it's not in the top 10, but
haven't seen it. I've been waiting to rewatch Into the Spider-Verse because I don't even remember what happens in that one. So I haven't.
I can't believe you haven't seen this one. That's insane.
Yeah.
You gotta make that happen. If you can try to find a place that it's showing in theaters somewhere.
Yeah.
Then I would wait to see it on a big screen.
Speaking of seeing it on the big screen, my number 3 and your number 2. Yeah, folks, it's what you've been waiting for. Oppenheimer. It's right here, baby. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you and I, we both really enjoyed this. It's one of our it's within both of our top 3s, and it should be. I mean, Chris Nolan, he did it again. He retold the events of history as they were in such dramatic fashion, and put his own spin on things. Insanely beautiful visuals, and a soundtrack and performances that come together so well to paint this picture. And some of it, I mean, he's made so many ambitious films with such ambitious screenplays, but for something based on source material, I mean, the whole cutting back and forth from the scenes with Robert Downey Jr. back to Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer through the years, and then the big kind of the two movies within the greater movie, one building the bomb, and two, what comes after. I think make this something definitely worth watching. And I won't say it's a perfect movie, right? Like, I think it kind of came in where it should for me. I think, it's probably within my top 5 Chris Nolan movies, but not in the top 3. And yeah, I mean, it could have done more in some places, but it's retelling some of the most consequential history, probably the most consequential historical event of the last 100 years. So yeah, I mean, you're bound to leave some parts of that out.
I watched this during Barbenheimer, and then I liked it then, but I didn't really care about it that much afterwards. And then everyone starts saying it's gonna win Best Picture. This is like 2 months ago, and I'm like, what are people talking about? Like, I liked it. Don't get me wrong. But I thought at that point I was like, what are people saying? So I rewatched it, and I rewatched it in IMAX 70mm, and it changed my life. Like this was like my favorite cinematic experience in a long, long time. This is how Christopher Nolan like meant it to be seen. This is the film he shot it on. This is the cameras he shot it on, and it jumped so high in my mind, man. This is my number 2 movie of the year, and frankly, I'm not even kidding when I say that I think this is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie right now. I don't even know how I would compare it to The Dark Knight, because I love The Dark Knight so much. It's at my number 1. But The Dark Knight, because it's a superhero movie and because it's The Dark Knight, almost feels weird to compare to any other Christopher Nolan movie. And yeah, but otherwise Oppenheimer it's sitting there, man. It's sitting at my number 2. And I'm having a hard time even communicating why. I think it's like he introduces so many different ideas in this movie about science and theory versus practical science versus the military industrial complex versus politicians versus religion versus morality versus death versus sex. Like, there's so many things that are just thrown into this script, and it moves fast, but it never loses you. And it's just a wild ride, and like, it's people talking in rooms for 3 hours and then the Trinity test in the middle, and it's like, how did he make that so incredibly engaging and like viscerally a cinematic experience? It's the editing, it's the cinematography, but it's like bar for bar, it's like the most engaging movie I think I've seen in a long, long time. I think I need to do a podcast episode about it. I know I do. It's gonna win Best Picture on Sunday, so maybe we can do an episode about it together in the aftermath, deep diving it or something. But yeah, it's just like, it's beautiful. I don't know. I want to talk about it more. It's streaming on Peacock now, so you can watch it in the States at least.
Yes, please watch it. Please watch it. My number 2, May December. We already talked about it. And now we get to the last 2 movies. We have different top number 1 picks, which means they're not. Each of our top picks are not within each other's top 10s. Very interesting.
Yeah, that is true.
I think I'll go first. So my top movie of 2023 is Polite Society. This movie, so I'll tell you what it's about. I mean, it follows like a British Pakistani family in the present, and it's basically a mom and dad and 2 sisters, and the younger sister is like the main protagonist, and both sisters they're very close with each other. The younger one's, I think, around in high school age, and the older one is in her 20s, and what happens is, in kind of the traditional, South Asian ways, the older one starts to get pressured to kind of like get married or get more serious about her life, and we kind of see the effects that has on the younger sister. And I think why this movie was so amazing to me was because I knew nothing about it when I walked into the theater to watch it. All I had seen was the movie poster and the fact that it was a comedy action thriller, as described on Letterboxd. And please do not watch the trailer to this movie. I think the trailer gives away a lot of what the movie ends up doing. But as I was watching it, and it's under 2 hours, it's pretty zippy. I was like, there's so many different directions they can go in. I'm intrigued by all these directions. Let's see what they end up doing. And they delivered. It was just such a fun ride, just crazy, like they had the audacity to do that kind of vibe. And I was audibly laughing in the theater. I think there was just so many relatable kind of growing up as a child of South Asian immigrants. So many relatable aspects of that movie just skyrocketed to the top of my list, and it's the clear number 1 for me. I mean, let's put it in objective metrics. I mean, I've got this at 5 out of 5 stars. In my rankings, and 2 through 6 I think are all 4 out of 5. So there's a clear drop off for me, and yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you didn't have any 4.5s? They just jumped
not this
straight
year.
to
I mean, I think there's some rewatches. I think we'll see with Oppenheimer. We'll see. Some things might change.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, for me, Oppenheimer was at a 4, now it's at a 4.5. So I get it. Yeah, Polite Society is great, man. Polite Society was super fun. I went and I saw it in theaters with my whole family sometime in May or June when it came out. Incredibly fun family movie, like kind of like a just like a fun, loose comedy. Um, and yeah, there's not a lot. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It was just more that like, it's pretty goofy at times, and
Yeah.
I think like in its worst moments, it's just like a little too goofy for me. But like, it's never bad. Like I never had a bad time at the movie. So 100% recommend it. I wanted to shout it out in my honorable mentions, but I didn't want to ruin the reveal of your number one movie, so I
Appreciate it.
left it out of that section. But super fun. This is also streaming somewhere. I forget where.
I think Peacock
It might if it's on
or Amazon.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be on Peacock because Peacock's got the good movies right now, man. Oppenheimer, Holdovers, Polite Society. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. It's crazy. Both of our number one movies are female directors and are both women of color, both Asian actually.
Oh yeah,
Is the director of Polite Society, is that her first movie?
I think it is.
Yeah. So this is Nida Manzoor's first movie, which is insane because my number one film is directed by a woman named Celine Song, who's also an Asian woman, in her feature film directorial debut, and that is Past Lives. Past Lives, I watched it and just fell in love with it. I never do this where I never watch a movie and I'm like 5 stars. I usually like if I loved it that much, I'll usually keep it at 4.5, let it simmer, let it marinate, and then eventually give it 5. And this one, I basically just gave it 5 stars, and I was like, I walked out of the movie theater and was like, that might be just a perfect movie. I have a whole podcast about this with Regina, and it's a really good podcast episode, actually. I'm very proud of that one. So please go listen to that if you want to hear more details about it. But I will just say that, like, it is a beautiful film about finding closure, and I think the writing is just phenomenal and has some really powerful images in it and just goes in a direction that, although I saw it coming because I knew what the movie was about going in, it still just floored me the way it was executed and was just told with a lot of maturity, which I never see when it comes to like romantic movies of this nature. Usually you're seeing a pretty immature version of it, or rather like the characters are somewhat immature, and this was just handled really gracefully, and I just loved it. So yeah, Past Lives is my number one movie. You are not super big on this movie. You watched this recently,
I
right?
did. I watched it recently in the theaters, and yeah, for me, it was just a little bit too understated, and I wish they would just come out and say it more with a little bit of some of the stuff.
Needed to be
but then
stating
also,
things, man.
I don't know. It felt a little too simplistic for me. The dialogue was just so. It felt lacking. It felt lacking in action and dialogue at times. But I mean, it's shot beautifully. Um, the performances are convincing. A totally respectable choice.
And there you go. I mean, I'm glad that we disagreed on number one, but we had like 6 in common throughout our top 10.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. I'm glad that our personality showed through there. And that's 2023. So like I didn't talk about my least favorite movies the way Parva did earlier in the podcast. It's because there's a good chance that Priya and I are going to be doing a worst movies of 2023 draft. That's her request. She has a lot of opinions on just the worst movies she's seen this year. I think she's seen more movies she hated than she liked. So hence that episode. Hopefully that'll come out in the coming weeks.
As I said, I think maybe as I rewatch some of these and pick up on some of the ones that I missed, the rankings will always go up, right? That's the same thing that happened in 2022 because I missed a few big ones and then I watched them and I was like, well, instantly into my top 3. And that's just kind of
Yeah.
always how it is. And I mean, that's always like a blessing, right? Like that means there's just a lot of good stuff out there. We're not hurting for it, so you gotta appreciate that. There's a couple things I did want to touch on. Some what's aged the worst and what's aged the best from
Yeah, let's do it.
some quotes from the draft podcast that we did about a year ago, actually. So I'll do the one what's aged the best first. And I mentioned it earlier, but it was Poor Things getting our last shout out on that podcast as something to watch in 2023. I think at that time we knew little to nothing about this movie. We had like the general 2 sentence premise, which does tell you a lot for Poor Things, but we didn't know that it was going to be on this scale and blow up, and it was going to be in the mainstream, and people were going to flock to the theaters to watch it. I think that is the movie that I've heard the most kind of casual moviegoers ask me about, and like, what are your thoughts on Poor Things? Have you seen it? That and probably Saltburn. Saltburn had a moment there.
Yeah. Yeah, true. If we'd known about Saltburn, I think I actually might have drafted it. Not knowing anything about it. I also like that the Poor Things shout out in our podcast was literally the last thing we said, and it was like getting drowned out by the outro music. Because if you didn't like that movie,
it was about
the way I kind of feel about it now. Yeah, it's about to be cut out of the podcast episode. So if you didn't like it, it's like, hey, most people probably didn't even get to the end of that podcast episode. So
yeah, a little bit of what's aged the worst. We're gonna start with Mihir's quote on Beau is Afraid after he drafted it. He said, "Quote: I like Ari Aster. I'm gonna watch it in theaters for my boy." And as you now know, Mihir didn't even watch the movie at all. Not even on streaming. So Ari Aster, shots fired at him. Tough scenes there. A couple quotes from me now to close it out. A little bit on the Barbenheimer, on what Barbenheimer was and what I thought it was going to be. So I think I was zagging a little bit, and I was like, Barbenheimer might be a little bit underwhelming. I said Barbie was potentially a niche movie, and it was going to struggle at the box office. It ended up being the highest grossing movie of 2023. Cleared $1 billion very easily. And now some on Oppenheimer. These are just so bad. Wish we could delete them. Quote, I am not sure how interesting of a movie this is going to be. I don't know if the story of Oppenheimer is going to be as action-packed and powerful. I think a lot of people...
That's a valid take. That's a valid opinion to like go into a 3-hour biopic about Oppenheimer,
The Trinity test, though. I mean, God.
Yeah.
The lead up to that was amazing. Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to see this as some historical movie. This is just a profile of Oppenheimer. This was in the context of calling it a potential box office bust. And I think it was the 4th highest grossing movie this year. It's about to crack $1 billion or something like that. So,
It is the highest grossing biopic of all time. It is also the second highest grossing R-rated movie of all time, second to only Joker from 2019. So it is a behemoth, the same way Barbie was.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's unreal, unheard of.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's how movies go, and it is a great thing that they do surprise us. Looking back, like there's so many movies that we never thought we would get around, that we didn't even know were going to come out, that cracked our top movies, and things that we thought might have been great that maybe let us down a little bit, and it's just so hard to predict, and it keeps things interesting.
Yeah, and to be honest, like looking back, we had a lot of master filmmakers put out movies this year. You have Christopher Nolan, Greta Gerwig, we already talked about. You have Martin Scorsese, David Fincher,
Ridley Scott, even with Napoleon.
Ridley Scott, yes. Yorgos Lanthimos, if you consider him a master. Just a lot of like really, really big directors putting out movies in 2023. It's almost like it's kind of like bittersweet, because now in 2024, I couldn't even name you 5 movies that are going to come out after Dune Part 2.
We got the remnants of the movies I picked in 2023. Those are probably
everything that you drafted, I guess, that hasn't come out. All right, let's wrap it up. This has been a really fun episode. Thanks for doing this with me, Parva. Listeners, thanks for listening. Take care. Special thanks to my lovely girlfriend Krupa Patel for the podcast's artwork, and my good friend Kevin Cow for the music that you're listening to now. You can find more of his music on Instagram at Waiguang Beats. Thanks, y'all.